Moment, just a few minutes, we'll get started. But at this time, if you'd like to take your seats, we invite you to do so. We're just going to wait a few minutes, a few seconds longer. Well, seems like we're all gathered for now. We thank you for joining us this afternoon as we honor the memory of our dear sister, Faye East. Before we begin, we also want to invite you, if you have any electronic devices, to please silence your devices at this time. Thank you. We begin by quoting a scripture, Ecclesiastes 7:1. There it mentions that a good name is better than good oil, and the day of one's death better than the day of one's birth. How can that be so? And do these words apply to our sister East? Well, in a moment, we'll answer those two questions. But first, let's review a few details of our dear sister. Faye East was born in Los Angeles on a Monday, September 30th, 1929. She came from a small family, 10 children, of which she was second to the youngest. There were many milestones throughout her life. She lived through a time that many historic events occurred, events that maybe you and I only read about. For example, she was born in 1929. 1929, USA, the Great Depression had just begun. She would live through that Great Depression till the age of 10. At that same age, World War II began. And she was 15 years old when she learned that Japan, two atomic bombs had been dropped over Japan. And we could go on, but we won't do that this afternoon. No, our goal is only to show that at a very young age, she had already seen a lot of things. And she could determine that something was not right on the world scene. The picture displayed on the monitors was taken when she was 17 years of age. During her 20s, she would marry and later have two children, Kenneth and Raymond Roberts. It would be during this decade, during her 20s, that the most important event of her life would take place. How so? Well, we know that a friend invited her to study the Bible, and she accepted. And we can speculate many reasons as to why she accepted the Bible study. We're not sure. It could have been that maybe the Bible answered a question clearly that no one else could answer for her. Or maybe she had seen so much violence and destruction in this world that she wondered how God would remedy what man had caused. Or maybe she was attracted to the beautiful promise that God would one day change this earth into a beautiful paradise. But for whatever reason it may have been, we know that she progressed in her Bible study. Why can we say that? Well, remember that good name we were talking about just earlier? Well, Sister East was beginning to create for herself a good name, so much that she would make steps and progress in her study. She would make improvements in her thinking and harmonize it with scriptural counsel to the point that at the age of 28, the day would come, a Saturday, 21st, 1958, that she would give public evidence of her decision to serve her God, her Father, Jehovah, by water baptism. And she would continue serving Jehovah faithfully, her God, for 61 years. She would make for herself a good name before men and before God during those 61 years. Faye East took her last breath June 18th, 2019, at the young age of 89. In a moment, we'll understand why we say that's a young age. Those who knew Sister East may remember that she was a seamstress. She loved to sew. She also enjoyed painting, was a very talented artist. She loved gardening. Flowers made her especially happy. And birds were very she liked birds so much that she even kept some in cages for herself. And when here at the meetings, you could always expect to smile. If you saw Sister East come in and you went to say hello to her, you were guaranteed to smile. She had a very lovable personality. And she always looked for ways to make you laugh. Whether it was with her or at her, but she would make you laugh. I remember once I told her, Sister, when I grow up, I hope I grow up to be just like you. Because of how smart she was. And she said, you mean in a wheelchair? But that was Sister East. You could always, if you cracked a joke, you could always expect her to come up with a reply or a smart remark. But what kind of person was she spiritually speaking? Why don't we let you answer that question? In the days leading up to today, an effort was made to interview some of you and ask you what you thought of Sister East and what you remembered of her. And here's what you had to say. She was spiritually upbuilding and encouraging with her words, always very loving and always finding ways to make others feel good. Also, she was very zealous in the ministry and very faithful to revisiting those who had previously shown interest to the Bible message. Another. Before she became sick, she didn't mind driving everywhere for her brothers and sisters, whether it was during preaching or to assemblies, as long as she was the one doing the driving. One sister commented, she was like a mother to us, and we felt like her children. When she became ill, she was disappointed that she couldn't do more to preach because she was too weak. Also, Sister East would get along with everyone in the congregation, especially others in wheelchairs, because according to Faye, she was able to see eye to eye with them. And lastly, she loved conversing with those at the door, both young and old. She was very productive, very confident, courageous, and bold. Even dogs couldn't hold her back. So she would instantly make a connection with anyone and everyone. And for that, and much more, we loved Sister East. We will truly miss her. We were like a family to her, all of us here. We will grieve also her death in a very different way, each and every single one of us. In fact, the Bible makes mention of people who grieved also in the past. Take, for example, Abraham. When his wife Sarah died, he mourned the loss of his wife. When Jacob lost who he thought was his lost son, Joseph, he also grieved for many days, and he would refuse comfort from his surviving children. But how does Jehovah feel when he sees us grieving? Does he have any emotions about what we suffer of when we grieve? Yes. We learn a lot by the actions of his son, Jesus. And Jesus, helps us to answer that question in John chapter 11. You'll find in John 11 verses 33, 34, and 35 that when he sees Mary and other Jews mourning the life or the death of Lazarus, which had been dead for 4 days, he became groaned within himself, and he gave way to tears. And we know that Jesus imitated his Father in everything that he did. Therefore, even we know that also Jehovah has tender feelings for those who grieve, and he promises to comfort them. For this reason, we sincerely hope that what follows this afternoon will be of comfort and help to anyone experiencing the agony of grief. Now, the Bible account tells us in Genesis that Jehovah created the earth. He put a beautiful paradise on the earth, and he put Adam and Eve in that beautiful paradise. He only gave them one law to not disobey, which we know they did and sinned. And we learn from that the effects of that one action have transferred to all of us up until today. Romans 5:12 says that we both inherited sin and death. But what would happen to God's original purpose for the earth and for us, for mankind? Notice the answer found in Isaiah 55:11. Turn to the Bible if you have a copy of that, please. And Isaiah 55:11 tells us what he is capable of doing with his promises. It reads, "So my word that goes out of my mouth will be. It will not return to me without results, but it will certainly accomplish whatever is my delight, and it will have sure success in what I send it to do." Here we learn that when Jehovah makes a promise, he keeps his word. He makes that be so. He makes it happen. And this includes all the promises that he's made, including this one. It's found in the book, recorded in the book of Revelation 21:4. And notice what it says. "And he, God, will wipe out every tear from their eyes, and death will be no more. Neither will mourning, nor outcry, nor pain be any more. The former things have passed away." This is what Sister East learned from the Bible. This is what helped her make a decision in her life. And this is the exact same thing she helped others to learn for themselves. By the way that she lived, she demonstrated, she gave evidence that she believed this would be so. Today, many can say that she is now in a better place. And you know what? She is. Let's stop there for just a moment. How can we say that she's in a better place? What better place is this? Well, we'll first answer what better place this is not. And we'll use a few scriptures to explain that. Notice Ecclesiastes 9:5, and notice what it reveals about this place. That's Ecclesiastes 9:5. It reads, "For the living," that's all of us, "the living know that they will die. But the dead know nothing at all, nor do they have any more reward, because all memory of them is forgotten." Verse 6, "Also, their love and their hate and their jealousy have already perished, and they no longer have any share in what is done under the sun." And verse 10, lastly, reveals, "Whatever your hand finds to do, do with all your might." Why? "For there is no work, nor planning, nor knowledge, nor wisdom in the grave, where we are all going." So according to this, our dead loved ones, they know nothing, they feel nothing, they remember nothing. So they no longer experience pleasure or pain, love or hate, happiness or sorrow. We can illustrate it this way. If a doctor is going to operate on you, you'll want him to put you to sleep. And while you're asleep, he operates, the operation's done, you wake up. When you awake, you know nothing about how the operation went. You remember nothing about the operation. Hopefully you don't remember any pain. You know nothing also, and you remember nothing about that except that you were asleep. So, similarly, the Bible repeatedly and consistently likens death to a peaceful sleep. In fact, even Jesus himself, in that account about Lazarus, he mentions right before resurrecting Lazarus in John 11:11, he says, our friend Lazarus is sleeping, but I am traveling there to awaken him. It is the same with Sister East. She is not somewhere enjoying or suffering. She is not elsewhere loving or hating. She is asleep in death. And she is waiting until Jesus calls those who have died back to life, including our dear sister. But we haven't answered the question yet. What better place is she in? Turn to Malachi 3:16 for the answer. Notice where that might be. Malachi, which is just before Matthew, Malachi 3:16, it reads, at that time, those who fear Jehovah spoke with one another, each one with his companion. And Jehovah kept paying attention and listening. And, notice, a book of remembrance was written before him for those fearing Jehovah and for those meditating on his name. Did you catch that? That better place is in Jehovah's memory, in his book of remembrance. No one can ever change that for you when you are in Jehovah's memory. And when the time comes for Jehovah to resurrect her from the dead, he will remember her just how she was, with her same personality, with that same love, with that same humor, with that same zeal that she had for Jehovah. And the Bible gives hope that millions who have died will live again. They will be resurrected in a paradise on earth. They have that opportunity, and at that, to live forever. Think of that, forever. They won't live to the young age of 89. No. 89 will seem like a newborn baby, only hours old, when you compare that to eternity. And that's the hope our Sister East had. It is scripturally based in the Bible. And notice, we'll turn to another scripture of how the Bible mentions this. This time we'll read John chapter 5. And we'll start with verse 25 of John chapter 5. As we read this scripture, see if you can find what two choices we all have. That's John 5, verse 25. It reads, most truly I say to you, the hour is coming, and it is now, when the dead will hear the voice of the Son of God, and those who have paid attention will live. 28. Do not be amazed at this, for the hour is coming in which some of those, in which all those in the memorial tombs will hear his voice and come out. Those who did good things to a resurrection of life, and those who practiced vile things to a resurrection of judgment. So what two choices do we have? Did you notice? Either A, a resurrection of life, or B, a resurrection for judgment. But do we have a choice in our choice? Yes, we do. Much depends on what kind of name we are making for ourselves. Just like Sister East and the kind of name that she made for herself. And also, much depends on what type of name we are making ourselves, not just before men, but most importantly, before God, in his book of remembrance. And we can use this occasion today to help us meditate on what kind of name we're making for ourselves. What are we doing with the gift that we've received, the gift of life? Do we have the opportunity to share in sanctifying God's name? Yes, we do. By our works and by our godly conduct. We began this afternoon by quoting a scripture. And we'll go back to that scripture. That was Ecclesiastes 7:1. But this time, we're going to not just read verse 1. We're also going to read verse 2. Ecclesiastes 7:1 mentions, a good name is better than good oil, and the day of death is better than the day of birth. Better to go to the house of mourning, or this funeral, than to the house of feasting. For that is the end of every man, and the living, all of us, should take it to heart. Now, at first, this may sound, admittedly, a bit morbid. But celebrating the memorial here for Sister East, we're encouraged to view the importance of being here. What we're doing with our life. How we're making either a good or not so good name for ourselves. Also, we're reminded of how brief and how truly uncertain life can be. You could be young, you could be 89. But we're reminded of that while we analyze the name that we've made for ourselves before Jehovah. So let's pause for a minute and let's give this thought a thought. What kind of name are we making for ourselves for God? Is it a name that He would want to remember? So may the resurrection hope give us an incentive to learn to do God's will. And may we also use this occasion to comfort one another, especially our Sister East's family as well, while we wait for the day we receive in our arms once again our mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, our sister, our best friend, Sister East. So we're very grateful that you could join us this afternoon. And we wish to thank you for being here. At this time, it is appropriate that we stand and that we sing a song of praise to Jehovah in conclusion. The song is number 139. It's titled, See Yourself When All Is New. It is based in part of what we read in Revelations 21:4, where we learned that death will be no more. So let's sing Song 139, and afterwards we'll invite Brother Vittorio Santos to conclude with prayer.